All right, welcome everyone to the Future Proof Podcast. My name is Alex Mysinek. I'm a local lender in Minnesota. I am joined here by Dave Truesdale today. He is a local realtor and he is also a contractor, so he's going to have really good insights on both of those worlds. So, Dave, thank you for joining me today.
Wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me, Alex.
Absolutely. So, why don't you just go in a little bit and introduce yourself, kind of what you're about, kind of how long you've been in real estate. Just give a quick little background.
Sure. I've been in real estate for 15 years. I got into real estate out in Boston. You have the Massachusetts in the background from there. So I got into real estate in 2011. And so I was a realtor out there for about 7 years, really cut my teeth out there in I know we're going to be talking about competitive markets. That was in a extremely competitive market for most of my time there. Moved back here to Minnesota to raise my kids. My wife and I are from here, basically. So total, I've been a realtor for 15 years. I've been a real estate investor for about 10, and I've been managing my own investment or construction projects for several years, and then decided it was time to get my own contractor's license. I love that world as well. So I got my contractor's license a little over 2 years ago, and that's been a really fun journey and has helped me serve my real estate clients better as well.
Yeah, we'll definitely get into that because that's a unique, skill to have, especially if you're looking at properties and going through them. Obviously they still want to get an inspection and things like that, but at least you can cut out time and, save legwork for your clients by just kind of taking a quick look at it, especially even if they're like, remote clients or like moving from a different city. That's a very big asset to have. So, the title of the podcast or the topic that I really wanted to talk about was just, how smart agents are winning in today's market as a realtor. And then we can kind of sprinkle on that contractor, piece of it. So, let's just kind of dive into the first questions. You mentioned being in Boston and being a super competitive market. Now, Minnesota and Minneapolis, objectively is still a very competitive market. Maybe not right now, in the winter, it gives a little bit more of a dynamic to, kind of how you place offers and how you list homes. But what are you doing to help buyers win offers in competitive markets? How do you set yourself apart?
Yeah. So in terms of, there's setting myself apart as an agent to be attractive to buyers. But here I'll talk about how I'm helping, once I'm working with a buyer, how do I help them in a competitive situation? There's a long list of tips or tricks you can do to make your offer stand out. But I think the main thing that a realtor can do is upfront preparation with that buyer. If you tell buyers, oh, you got to offer more, consider not having an inspection, this, that, you can't have that conversation as you're getting ready to make an offer on a property. So when I start working with a buyer, I walk them through, even if they're not a first-time buyer, we walk through the whole thing. What is the buying process like? What's the transaction process like? And in that, we go over, if we get into a competitive situation, what are the things that we could choose to do or not do to make our offer stand out? So there are too many of those to kind of go through each one. I mentioned inspection. One is, and you mentioned my contractor background. Yeah, I've had a lot of properties where a buyer thought about making an offer and then they don't, because I can give them kind of a preliminary view of that property. One trick is, if you know, okay, there are already 5 offers on this property, we really have to stand out. You could waive the inspection contingency, but there are degrees of that. I'm not going to tell a buyer to never have a home inspection. What we have done is, if they're sure that's the property they want, we might get an inspector in there immediately to do a walkthrough inspection with them. So not a report inspection, but a walkthrough inspection with them prior to them making an offer. It's much less expensive than the full report. And then they've had some inspector eyes on it. So that's one where then my buyer was comfortable waiving that inspection contingency because they've had an inspector look at the property, and that helped them get that. There are a whole list of those that you can go into with hopefully your agent goes into with you as a buyer. There are also ones, Alex, since you're in mortgages, that relate to mortgages. One that is not negotiable is, all of my buyers, when we're making offers, they've gone through a thorough pre-approval process, right? So not just entering into a form, big nationwide lenders where you can get a letter that says you're pre-something, right? But they're relying on the buyer to list their income, their debt, all that sort of thing. All the loan officers I work with, they actually take the buyer's financial information in a thorough way up front so that we know when we make an offer, and the list agent, importantly, knows that when we make an offer, the likelihood of this financing coming through is very high.
So you touched on something. We'll go back on that because I have obviously almost all lenders have the ability to do this. Most of them do. Some brokers don't because they don't actually work for a lender, but some of their, wholesale lenders will let them do like a pre-full underwrite up front. But that's something that you can also do as a buyer. So, if you are listening to this and you want to maybe even go to the next level, you can actually get a full free upfront underwrite and actually send that file to the underwriter, have them confirm all the income, assets, and credit. Because on a true pre-approval, at the end of the day, it's all dependent on the underwriter or the loan officer and their, level of detail as well. So, even if they give you a pre-approval, there's there's still a chance that things could fall apart in underwriting because they missed maybe a large deposit, or we missed a big thing right now is the buy now, pay later things on bank statements where people will go in and, they're going to buy like a $400, hair curler or whatever. And then they pick to do the buy now, pay later. So there's, extra, debt on their bank statements that wouldn't show up on their credit report. And you'd have to go through the bank statements to see that. So, things like that will catch it. But you mentioned something about talking with your buyers upfront, very specifically on the entire process that you do. But you mentioned one thing key that I really like, that it's not only just your first time home buyers. Why is that? Why are you taking through a person that's bought 3 or 4 homes in the past through the same, process that you would a first time home buyer?
Sure. Different market conditions when they bought or sold before. Market conditions may have been different. Just general customs around how the realtor community operates. And so what a transaction might be might be different. The laws might be different, right? There are certain municipalities in the Twin Cities require a city inspection called a truth and sale of housing inspection. These are all different, right? So it's like a seller or a buyer has done maybe 4 transactions lifetime, right? You wouldn't expect a realtor who's done 4 transactions lifetime to not need any furthering education. Yeah.
For sure.
So every transaction's different. Market conditions are different. And I mean, sometimes I take a client through that and they know 80% of the stuff that I'm talking about. And so we can make that section go a little faster, but it's my job to make sure that they know the other 20% as well. And that just by the end of the transaction, they feel like it went as expected. They were educated and, weren't blindsided by anything. So everybody gets it, whether they want it or not.
The reason why I ask that is because on the flip side, when I get a referral or I get someone online that comes to me, and first time home buyers, obviously I'm going through everything in super detail. I'm going over literally line by line on the loan estimate, which I do with everyone. I'm going through the entire loan process. And then with the first time home buyers, I'm hyper focused on making sure that, that happens. With repeat buyers, find a lot when I'm kind of doing that, needs and goals call at the beginning of it, that the first home that they bought, even with a realtor or a loan officer, they were never taken through the proper steps. So if you just assume that they're, know what they're doing or know, all the details behind it, you're assuming wrong because you're actually putting your eggs in another person's basket that might have not given them the, the level of service that you will give. So that's kind of why I run through everyone the same way. But like you said, if they already know it or they're super familiar with it, we can just kind of skip over it and, make it a little bit quicker. So I love that. All right. So, with the seasonality in Minnesota also coming into a different market, cycle right now, we're definitely transitioning into a completely different market cycle with rates kind of starting to drop. Hopefully, we'll see over the next couple months, that could bring more buyers into the market. So how are you approaching listings or pre-market prep differently now for that scenario or those scenarios?
So the only thing that's different for me is kind of similar to the last questions. The thing that is different is client expectations.
Yeah.
In terms of pre-market prep for a seller, like it's the same regardless of the market, right? You want to make the home look as good as possible. So have the conversation with the sellers. Should we do anything to the home? Are there repairs that should be made? Should we paint? Should we consider new flooring? Any different things that are major upgrades? How do you make that look as good as possible? and what is your appetite to do that? What's your budget to do it? Right? I think I assume, but I check with buyer or sellers. I assume everybody's objective is to net the most money possible, but some people have limited budgets and limited appetite. But basically, one, we make the home look as good as possible. And because I'm a contractor, I can handle that process, right? So if I work with a seller and they already have a relationship with people, they have a relationship with a handyman, a painter, or a contractor that maybe did some work on their home, that's great. But also if they just want to say to me, yeah, we have a budget of X, right? We have a budget of $8,000 to put into this home before we list it, and we want to net the most money possible. Can you just manage all of this? I can manage all of that and say, great, it's off your plate. So one, make it look as good as possible. Two, create excellent professional media around that. So at a minimum, professional photos, maybe professional video. Do we want to does the house have a special story that we want to get out to media outlets? Home staging is another one on that first list. Let's have that conversation. Number three, price strategically. This is also part of expectations. What's your specific neighborhood doing right now for your specific price range? And then four, you get it on the market and you market the property and try to sell the property. So all of that stuff doesn't change. I think it's easy for a seller to think, oh, it's a seller's market. I don't have to do anything and my house will sell. And it might, but it'll sell for less. So the difference is really client expectations. If we do all of these steps to net you the most money, are we going to expect 5 to 10 offers? Or are we going to expect one offer in the first week?
Looking back at, the first couple of years of your career and then fast forward to now that you have the experience as a general contractor, do you think guiding people on what to improve or how to improve it or what to pick and choose, has that given you a little bit more of a leg up on maybe another, realtor or just maybe even your past self and kind of guiding the clients the correct way?
Yeah. I think most realtors realtors are trained to sell homes. They are not trained to be experts on houses. So most realtors, and this was myself 10 years ago, I could tell a seller, okay, I think you're going to get about X amount, this range for your property. But if we do this, if we paint new carpet here, new countertops in the kitchen, okay, now here's our range. I did not know. And I think most realtors don't know then well, how much is that going to cost? So it's a lot of to be able to make that assessment, to have the experience and then the subcontractor network to make the assessment of, sure, we could make this house worth more by doing things. What things should be done? To be able to make that assessment accurately and in a timely manner and then actually execute it and get it done. That's where I've really improved over the last several years.
So basically, your future self could have done the exact same thing, but now you're just going to be a little bit more efficient at it. And also you can be like a one-stop shop for them and actually get the job done for them if they need it.
Yeah, precisely.
Cool. Awesome. That's awesome because a lot of people, during that stressful moment, the last thing they probably want to do, unless they have relationships or, someone with another general contractor, handyman, they don't want to go look for that and start vetting people and then get it all scheduled. And it just saves time and, kind of money and resources, having them help you out. So that's awesome. How does your GC background show up when you're walking the homes?
Yeah. Has there ever been a time where that contractor knowledge has helped to land or save a deal? Yes. I'm trying to think of a good example. There have been lots of times where my contractor experience has affected a deal. I had one where I could tell that there was a structural issue with a house. And yes, this also showed up on the inspection, but I was the one who could really press the subject, get a structural engineer in there, and then negotiate during that inspection process. It didn't necessarily save the deal. It got a significantly lower price for my buyer, knowing how big of a deal that actually was. A different type of example, actually, the question was about my knowledge.
Yep.
You have a good contractor, whether that contractor is a realtor or not, just a good builder. A lot of what you're getting is their network of subcontractors and their knowledge. There's just a ton of technical knowledge that goes into any structure. So one that did actually save a deal, I had buyers who had some mobility issues and they needed either single level living, but they wanted a single family home. So we found a property that they loved, but they needed to assess whether it could have an elevator put in it or a stair lift put in it. And it was a competitive situation. We had to make an offer in the first weekend quickly. We had to beat out other offers. So we went through all of those tips and tricks. But then it was like so I kind of assessed with my own knowledge, where could you put an elevator? Did the research, even though I've never put in an elevator before, did the research on how large is an elevator shaft for a residential home? Where could we possibly put this? Does that area have the right structural supports? But then during the inspection period, they were kind of having cold feet on this could be a huge expense. And so they felt like they needed some more, some numbers on that.
Yeah.
And they were skeptical whether we could get that information in the inspection period. And I reached out to a couple of elevator and stair lift subcontractors, and in less than 48 hours had a couple of quotes for them on both of those options, and they were able to proceed with the deal. And so that's when I think it actually did save the deal.
What option did they pick?
The
Did they go
stair
with?
lift.
Okay, got it. I was
The
going to be
elevator-
like, the elevator would be impressive.
The elevator for that many levels was like, plus some structural changes, was going to be like 90,000.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say like 100K.
the stair lift, depending on how they do it, is like 15 to 25.
Okay, not bad. Now go back to the thing you said about that first example about the foundation of the house and whether that might have saved the deal, might have not. Either way, that was still like a really big asset for your client, because I've been on the other side. I only see the cancellation come through, and then I'm just, reaching out to my buyers or reaching out to my agent, just saying like, hey, what's up? What happened? And they were like, oh, something, there was like mold, or there was, structural damage, things like that. So I think maybe the ease of, or not the ease, but maybe the confidence they had in you and going in there and really assessing it, getting that, the structural engineer, getting a quote for it, saving the money on it. I think a lot of people in that situation with a realtor that might not have been that knowledgeable might have just backed out because they don't want to deal with the structural issues. So I think that's a really big asset.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's certainly transactions as well where my advice to a client would be to back out of the deal, right?
Yeah.
Unless you can lower the price by, this larger amount. It goes both ways, but yeah, we try to get buyers and sellers the best and most complete information.
Yeah, because at the end of the deal, you're not trying to, your number one focus is not closing a deal or, getting a paycheck. It's really making sure that client gets into the house that's really good for them, and, that they can kind of look back and say that was a, really good deal. Because I think the not number one thing, but I think a lot of faults with, younger agents, or maybe agents that, don't look at that customer service aspect of it in the long haul. They don't get those repeat clients. They don't have the referrals. They don't have things coming back, because if an agent, I've seen it many times on my side, and even, talking to my past clients and reaching out to them and like, hey, are you using so-and-so anymore to sell the house? And they're like, no, like we felt like we were pressured. We got pushed into it. We hate the house. It's not working for us. And that same exact, mentality is going to get you a referral, because you're going to save the client from that, experience. So
yeah,
that's awesome. Okay. We'll do a couple last questions. So what's one thing you're doing right now that more agents should be doing, to kind of help their clients out better?
Well, I mean, one thing I'm doing, I think the main focus here, and one thing that I've been focused on in my business is with my contractor knowledge. I think most agents, that's not an option for them. And certainly it's not right for all agents to go get a contractor's license. But I think we'll kind of answer two in one. What I think more agents should be doing, and I am seeing this more and more. Like identify what is your niche, right? Or what's your leg up on other agents. You don't have to serve everybody. And so I see more and more agents who are like an agent and something else related, right? So an agent and an investor. If you are looking to buy rental property that you buy and hold, having an agent who owns several rental properties and can help you assess the finances behind that is probably a good thing. Yeah, right. So it's like, it's not necessarily one specific thing, but I'd encourage agents. It's like, why did you get into real estate? What do you really love about it? What's that thing within real estate that you totally nerd out on? Because there are buyers and sellers like you that would love somebody who has a higher knowledge in that area than everybody else they could hire.
I love that because I think that's a lot more needed in this in kind of our industry. And like you just said, I think it would be way more beneficial. And I see that the loan officers and realtors that really lean into what they're good at, what they love to do, what they're passionate about, and bring that over into their work, do much better than, a loan officer or realtor that are just trying to force it out there and just talking about how much money, how much sales they did each year and not bringing that to a personal level. So I love that. Speaking about personal level, tell us a little bit about you personally, your family. You live in Minnesota. Kind of what do you like? What do you guys like to do, for
Yeah,
fun? Why did you guys move back to Minnesota from Boston?
sure. So I have a wonderful wife that I met in college at St. Olaf College. So I'm from Ohio. She's from Illinois. Together, we are from Minnesota. We have three girls, a 10-year-old and 7-year-old twins. We live in Linden Hills, which is southwest Minneapolis. I told my wife if we were going to move back from Massachusetts to Minnesota, we had to live within walking distance to the lakes
There you go.
so we could enjoy lake life. Let's see, outside of real estate, we were competitive ultimate frisbee players. We're now in our 40s, so our knees are not as good. Yeah, life now is really about it's really about the kids in our like local community in Southwest Minneapolis. That's become a big part of our social circle, and
Yeah,
really kind of just following our kids' interests and encouraging them to do lots of different things. We're hoping to get into skiing this winter with the kids.
there you go.
We'll see if it happens.
I go. I'm going Friday. Last Friday, I brought my son. He's 3. I've got him on skis when he was 1.5. So
Nice.
that's a huge focus. It's funny that you mentioned talking about skiing and talking about ultimate frisbee. I have like a super funny story about that. I used to be in the really competitive ski racer, ski team with like Eric Seiler at Buck Hill, Lindsey Vaughn, you know, Christina killed out. We had a summer camp in Oregon one time and we are playing ultimate frisbee in the parking lot. A drunk driver came around the corner, like kind of speeding, and I was running through the parking lot to grab, a frisbee. We have it all blocked off because, we were, doing it, but he came through the cones and I like hit his trunk, or the hood of the car, rolled up over the windshield and kind of like fell off, but like landed on my feet. And he came out of the car just, super angry that I like, messed up his car, and like grabbed him by the neck and like brought me into like the hotel, the chalet of the hotel or whatever, the main area. And Eric Seiler was there. And I don't know if everyone knows Eric Seiler. He's probably the number one, in Minnesota for sure, but he's, he's created like 3 to 4 Olympian, ski racers, including Lindsey Vaughn. And Lindsey Vaughn was there at that time. And I don't know, it was just huge commotion or whatever. I'll never forget. I think that was the last time I played ultimate frisbee, but I'll never forget ultimate frisbee because that story is
And
kind of
and that incident is why you are not competing it in Milan this
for
winter,
sure.
right?
Yeah, exactly. It was, or because I was like 140 pounds soaking wet my entire childhood through like 27 years old. So I didn't really have the muscle mass to, bring me down the hill a lot faster. Okay. So final question, then we'll kind of go into how people get in touch with you and how to reach out to you. What advice do you have to a newer agent right now trying to make it in the real estate world, become a realtor, or even become a general contractor?
I think in being a realtor, the realtor market is saturated. Like the barrier to entry to becoming a realtor is so low. People get into it as a side thing. Some people think it's going to be easy money.
Yeah.
It's not easy money. It takes a lot of work to have a consistent business. So advice for somebody who's becoming a new realtor, get into it eyes wide open and know that it's going to be hard work, and you're going to have to be consistently looking for business and, calling your personal network or however you're going to build that business. And you're going to have to do that consistently for many, many years. Maybe 10 years down the road, you have a business that is just referrals, but you have to be willing to be consistent, and you have to be willing to go out and ask for business on a regular basis. In construction, I think my advice for anybody in construction, if they don't have construction experience, is don't become a general contractor right away. If your goal is to serve other clients, do something. Go work for the company that you would like doing the thing that you want to do.
Sure.
Because there's, technically speaking, the amount to learn as a general contractor is massive, and it's hard to be good at in short order.
Nice. I think that's great advice. I echo the barrier to entry for a realtor, and same thing for a loan officer is super low. I think the number one, advice for any type of loan officer or someone getting into it, just be yourself and kind of leverage kind of what you're good at and what you're passionate about, and then try to transpire that into social media or however you are comfortable marketing yourself. But consistency is the key. So at the end of the day, if you're consistent in what you do and you fight for it, you probably can get it. But if you just think that deals are going to come to you, that's the farthest from the truth. Dave, thank you for the time together today.
Yeah, it's been a
If
pleasure.
there are people that are looking to, buy a home, sell a home, or even any type of contractor, work, how can they get in touch with you? What's the best way?
My website, truesdaleteam.com. My last name, True, the word True, TRUES, Dale, team, TEAM.com.
Okay, awesome. Well, I appreciate your time today. Well, it was a pleasure, and we'll talk soon.
Wonderful. Thanks, Alex.
All right, see ya.
The average 30-year fixed rate is sitting around 6.82%. That's down slightly from last week, continuing a slow downward trend. 15-year fixed rates are near 5.9%, and experts say rates will likely stay between 6 and 7% for the rest of the year. So while we're not seeing huge drops, buyers now have more leverage with rising inventory. If your clients are waiting for perfect conditions, now's the time to help them act strategically. Let's talk.